Felix was a cat, not just any cat, but a fluffy tabby with the most mesmerizing green eyes you could ever imagine. A cat with very, very curious whiskers. These whiskers were not just ordinary, they were like tiny antennas, always sensing the world around him. They twitched with excitement at every little thing. Whether it was a fluttering butterfly or a rustling leaf, Felix's whiskers were always on high alert. Felix loved his home, but he loved exploring even more. The garden was his kingdom, a place full of mysteries and adventures waiting to be discovered. His favorite time? Afternoon, when the sun was warm and the neighbors were busy. The golden rays of the sun made his fur glow and he felt like the king of his little world. Felix's human Lily often warned him, "Now, Felix, be a good cat and stay out of trouble." She knew how adventurous he could be, but Felix had a way of finding adventure wherever he went. He couldn't help it. The world was just too fascinating for him to stay put. It was the whiskers, you see, always leading him on. They were his guides, his little explorers, always pushing him to discover new things. One day, Felix spotted a butterfly. His whiskers twitched with excitement as he chased it around the garden, leaping and pouncing with joy. After a long day of adventures, Felix would return home tired but happy. His whiskers would finally rest, but only until the next adventure called. One sunny afternoon, Felix saw it, an open window. The sunlight poured in, casting a warm glow across the room. Felix's whiskers twitched with excitement as he realized this was his chance for a little adventure. It was in Mrs. Honeybun's house, next door. Mrs. Honeybun was known throughout the neighborhood for her delicious cookies, and Felix had always been curious about her secret recipe. Mrs. Honeybun made the best cookies, and Felix often smelled them baking. The aroma of freshly baked cookies wafted through the air, making his mouth water. He could almost taste the buttery, sweet goodness. Just a peek, he thought. Squeezing through the window, he carefully maneuvered his way inside, making sure not to disturb anything. The thrill of the unknown made his heart race. The kitchen smelled divine, buttery and sweet. The scent was even more intoxicating up close, and Felix felt like he was in cookie heaven. Felix saw a plate of freshly baked cookies cooling on the counter. They were golden brown with little chocolate chips peeking out, and they looked absolutely perfect. Oh, how tempting they looked. His paws itched to reach out and grab one, but he knew he had to resist. But Felix knew better than to steal. He had been taught well by his owner, and he respected Mrs. Honeybun too much to take her cookies without permission. He was a curious cat, not a naughty one. Felix decided to explore the kitchen a bit more, taking in all the sights and smells. He knew that sometimes the best adventures were the ones where you simply looked and appreciated without taking anything at all. Felix padded into Mrs. Honeybun's parlor, his whiskers twitching with curiosity. The room was warm and inviting, with a soft glow that made everything seem magical. It was filled with fascinating things, shelves lined with trinkets, books, and mysterious objects that seemed to whisper stories of their own. A grandfather clock ticked in the corner, its rhythmic sound adding to the room's charm, and a fire crackled in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. On a shelf, Felix spotted something truly intriguing, a ball of yarn. It was nestled among other curiosities, but its bright red color caught his eye immediately. It was bright red and begging to be played with. Felix couldn't resist. He reached up with a paw, gently batting at it before it tumbled to the floor. He batted it with his paw and chased it across the floor, unraveling the yarn as he went. The yarn trailed behind him like a playful serpent, and Felix was in his element, lost in the joy of the moment. Section 4. The Garden Chase. Suddenly a bark. Out from under the armchair rushed a small, fluffy dog. It was Buster, Mrs. Honeybun's mischievous puppy. Buster barked again playfully, and Felix knew it was time to go. Felix zoomed out the cat flap just as Mrs. Honeybun came in. Buster chased after him, barking happily. They ran through the garden, their game turning into a joyful chase. Section 5. Home Sweet Home. Finally, out of breath, Felix reached his own garden. He slipped through his cat flap, Buster's barks fading behind him. Lily was putting out his dinner. "Oh, Felix," she chuckled, "you look like you had an adventure." Felix purred contentedly, licking his paws. His whiskers twitched, remembering the day's adventures. It was good to be home, but tomorrow was another day full of exciting possibilities.